The mountains stretched across the horizon like jagged teeth, their peaks piercing the low-hanging clouds. In the distance, a storm churned, painting the sky in shades of gray and silver. Most people in the frontier colony avoided this area. Rumors swirled about a man who lived alone in these heights, a man feared by everyone. They said he was violent, dangerous, even cursed. But to Leora, a young xenobiologist with courage in her bones and curiosity in her heart, he was simply human. Leora adjusted the straps of her pack, her boots crunching against the icy gravel of the mountain path. She paused, looking up at the tallest peak, where a small structure barely visible from below clung stubbornly to the mountainside. This was the home of Ronan Vale, the man everyone called the Mountain Ghost. Most people in the colony wouldn't dare climb this far. Stories of his exploits and temper had spread through the settlements like wildfire. Some claimed he had fought alien warbands alone, defending the colony's borders. Others whispered that he had killed intruders without a second thought. Leora, however, didn't come here for legends. She came for science, and perhaps a little for adventure. Her breathing quickened as the wind picked up. Snowflakes began to dance in the air, cold and sharp. Leora kept moving. She had arrived to fulfill her assignment, live at the remote outpost, study the mountain ecosystem, and report her findings back to the colony. But the assignment had a twist she hadn't expected. Ronan Vale was officially listed in the Interstellar Marriage Network as a lonely frontier guardian. The colony hoped pairing him with a willing partner would keep him tethered to the human settlements and prevent further isolation. Leora had volunteered for this marriage program. Reluctantly, she had never wanted a husband. And the idea of marrying a man no one dared approach was intimidating. Yet here she was, climbing toward a locked-away life, armed with courage, a small supply of tools, and a heart full of determination. The storm hit hard as she reached the base of the outpost. Lightning cut across the sky, illuminating the angular silhouette of Ronan's home. The building looked more like a fortified bunker than a residence. Leora's stomach twisted at the thought of facing him. How could a single person survive up here? The terrain was harsh, and the rumors about his temper made her uneasy. But there was no turning back. Her hand shook as she pressed the small communicator she had brought. "Ronan Vale, this is Leora Kessler from the colony," she called out, her voice nearly lost in the roar of the storm. "I've come to live at the outpost. Please open the dome." The storm seemed to swallow her words. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, a metallic click echoed through the air, followed by the low hum of a door unlocking. The dome slid open, revealing a man who looked nothing like the monstrous figure the stories painted. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with weathered features and sharp, calculating eyes. His dark hair was streaked with gray, and a faint scar ran along his cheek. Ronan Vale's gaze swept over her, cool and assessing. "You're brave," he said finally, his voice low but not unkind. "Or foolish. Maybe both." "I came prepared," Leora said, stepping inside, trying to keep her nerves steady. She set her pack down, careful not to make sudden movements. "I know who you are. And I'm not afraid." Ronan's eyes narrowed. "Most people are. I'm not most people." Leora smiled faintly. "And I didn't come just to stay here. I came to help." He shook his head. "Help is not needed." The hum of machinery filled the dome. Monitors glowed with data streams. Automated drones hovered silently, and vents hissed as they cycled air. Leora's curiosity got the better of her, and she stepped closer to one of the consoles. "This system. It's amazing. You built all of this yourself?" Ronan crossed his arms. "It keeps me alive. That's all that matters. I want to see it. I want to understand it. Please," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. She realized, suddenly, that words alone would not convince him. She needed a stronger gesture, something that would make him understand her commitment to this unusual assignment. Her hand went to her communicator, and she hesitated. Then, with a steady breath, she spoke the words that had been practiced for weeks in her mind. "Will you marry me?" The words hung in the air, Leora's cheeks flushed, but she did not look away. Ronan's eyes widened, and for a moment, the mountain ghost looked almost human. Confusion, not anger, flickered across his face. "You, what?" His voice was a whisper, almost lost in the storm outside. "I know it's sudden," Leora said quickly. "But it's part of the protocol. The colony wants to make sure you're not alone. And honestly, I think I could help you. If you let me." Ronan's lips pressed into a thin line. He leaned back against the metal frame of the doorway, his eyes scanning the stormy peaks beyond. "Most people don't ask me this. Most people don't come here at all." "I'm not most people," Leora repeated, her tone firmer this time. "I didn't come here to run away from danger. I came here to face it. With you." "I'm not most people, Leora. I'm not most people, Leora. With you. I'm not most people of Run. I'm not most people of you. I'm not most people." A long silence followed. The storm outside raged, but inside the dome, the tension was almost tangible. Ronan finally exhaled, a sound of weariness and thoughtfulness. "You have no idea what you're asking," he said. "This isn't a home. This isn't safe. And I don't do people." "I know," Leora said. "But I also know that isolation can be worse than danger. And I think it's time someone helped you carry it." Ronan's gaze softened slightly, though he did not speak. For the first time in many years, someone looked at him not with fear or awe, but with understanding. The storm outside began to abate, leaving a quiet hum in its wake. Leora took a cautious step closer. "I'm serious," she said. "I'll stay. I'll help. I won't leave. Will you let me in?" Ronan's jaw tightened. He looked at her for what felt like hours, weighing the risks, the loneliness, and the human desire he had long suppressed. Finally, he gestured toward a small seating area near the control console. "Sit," he said. "We'll talk, but don't expect me to say yes. Not yet." Leora sat, keeping her movements slow and calm. She knew she had crossed the first threshold, the one most people never dared to approach. "I've lived here alone for 10 years, Ronan said quietly, his eyes fixed on the glowing monitors. 10 years of silence. 10 years of guarding something no one can see. And now, you show up and speak words I thought I'd never hear again. What is it you're guarding?" Leora asked, her curiosity piqued. Ronan's gaze flicked to her, sharp and calculating. "That's not for anyone else to know. And it's not something I allow anyone to interfere with." "I understand," Leora said. "But maybe it doesn't have to be just you anymore. Maybe we can face it together." For a moment, he said nothing. The hum of machines and the faint scent of ozone from the storm outside filled the air. And then, almost imperceptibly, Ronan nodded. "You can stay," he said. "But understand this. You're not here to change me. You're here to survive." "I can do that," Leora replied, smiling. "And maybe, in time, we'll do more than just survive." Ronan looked away, out at the mountains. No words came, but the faintest hint of a smile touched his lips. For the first time in years, someone had stepped past the fear and rumors, past the walls he had built, and into his world. Outside, the storm clouds broke, revealing the pale light of the twin suns setting behind the peaks. The mountain remained wild and unforgiving, but inside the dome, a fragile sense of trust had begun to grow. For Leora and Ronan, the real journey was only just beginning. The first night in the mountain outpost passed quietly. Outside, the wind howled across the peaks, carrying snow and ice that rattled the metal walls. Inside, the hum of machinery and soft blinking lights filled the air. Leora lay on the small cot that Ronan had reluctantly offered, her mind racing with questions and curiosity. Ronan, as usual, kept to himself in the corner, repairing a series of complex devices that glowed faintly under his hands. Leora had watched him work in silence, amazed at the precision and care he put into every task. The man everyone feared as a mountain ghost was not violent or cruel. He was simply focused, disciplined, and cautious. She had asked countless questions, but most of them had been met with short, guarded answers. Still, Leora noticed small things. The way he adjusted the temperature controls to make her cot warmer. The way he left extra rations near the kitchenette. The faint smile he gave when she successfully calibrated one of the sensors. These tiny gestures contradicted the terrifying legends surrounding him. Morning came, bringing pale sunlight that filtered weakly through the dome's reinforced windows. The storm had passed, leaving sparkling snow across the mountain slopes. Leora prepared breakfast using the small supplies she had brought. She wanted to make a good first impression, even if Ronan was a man who seldom smiled. "Food ready," she said softly. "I hope you're hungry." Ronan didn't answer immediately. He was examining a monitor, his sharp eyes scanning data from sensors around the outpost. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm, but deliberate. "You're very persistent. Most people would have run by now." "I'm not most people," Leora replied, smiling as she handed him a tray of food. "I can handle isolation. I can handle challenges. And I think I can handle you." He paused, taking the tray, and for the first time, she noticed a flicker of something in his expression. Amusement, perhaps, or surprise. "You're bold," he said, "bold enough to walk straight into a place where even colony patrols hesitate to go." Leora shrugged. "I like understanding things firsthand. Stories are one thing, but the truth is always better. Don't you want someone who understands the truth instead of fearing you?" Ronan's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. He ate in silence, his eyes distant. Leora decided not to push. Patience had already gotten her farther than most people dared. After breakfast, Leora followed Ronan to the main control hub. The room was a maze of consoles, screens, and strange alien devices that pulsed with faint energy. She couldn't help but marvel at it. "Did you build all this?" she asked. Ronan nodded. "Mostly. Some of it is old alien tech I found beneath the mountain. It's stable, but dangerous if misused. That's why I monitor it constantly." "Alien tech?" Leora repeated. Her curiosity ignited. "You mean someone else lived here before humans?" "Yes," Ronan said, his voice flat. "Long before humans colonized this frontier, this mountain was different, dangerous. I've been guarding what's left of it ever since." Leora stepped closer to the console, trying to understand the readings. "So, you're not just hiding up here. You're protecting something?" Ronan's eyes met hers, sharp and unreadable. "Exactly. And I prefer to do it alone. It's safer that way." "But doesn't that get lonely?" Leora asked gently. "Even someone like you must want company sometimes." He didn't answer right away. Leora could see the conflict in his eyes. The stories of his coldness were only partly true. He was disciplined, yes, but he also carried the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. She could feel it in the way he moved, the way he guarded the alien devices, the quiet tension in his jaw. Finally, he spoke. "I lost people. Once. A long time ago. I've been careful ever since." "Rummed." Leora nodded slowly. "I see. But sometimes guarding something is easier with help. Sometimes it's less heavy if someone shares the burden." Ronan studied her for a long moment, then turned back to the console. "Most people can't handle this," he said. "They see danger and run. Or worse, they interfere and make things worse. You might survive." Leora smiled faintly. "Might? You're not very confident in me." "I'm confident," he said, almost under his breath. "I'm just cautious." The day passed slowly as Leora explored the outpost. She discovered a small hydroponic garden, a series of living quarters that looked more like survival pods, and a set of alien glyphs etched into the walls. Ronan allowed her to observe but carefully prevented her from touching anything critical. Every action, every decision, had to be precise. One mistake could trigger systems she didn't fully understand. By evening, Leora had learned enough to realize the truth. Ronan Vale was not a man to fear because of cruelty, but because of his experience, his knowledge, and the burden he carried. The stories had turned him into a legend, but the man was simply a human shaped by years of isolation and responsibility. As the twin suns dipped behind the peaks, casting long shadows across the dome, Leora sat beside the main console. "Tell me about them," she said softly. "The people you lost." Ronan's expression darkened, but he didn't turn away. "We were a strike team," he said slowly, "sent to defend the colony from a hostile alien species called the Kerulith. Bioengineered, intelligent, dangerous. They attacked outposts across the frontier. We stopped them, but not without cost." Leora listened quietly. "You survived?" He nodded. "Yes. But everyone else didn't. I made sure of it. I sealed the Kerulith Queen beneath this mountain. It was the only way to save the colony. But the cost, it was high." Leora felt a pang of sympathy. "That's a lot to carry alone. No wonder you live up here. You've been protecting everyone and keeping yourself separate." "Exactly," Ronan said, almost sharply. "No one else needs to die because of my choices. No one else should get involved." "But I want to be involved," Leora said softly, placing a hand on a console for support. "Not to get in danger, not to interfere, but to help. I can do things you can't. See things you might miss. Maybe together, we can make it easier." He looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time. The cautious, wary man everyone feared was starting to show signs of trust. "You have courage," he said, his voice quieter now. "Most people don't understand the danger they walk into. You might." "I understand enough," she said, smiling gently. "And I want to learn more. But I also want to know you. Not the legend, not the ghost stories, but the man behind them." For a long moment, there was silence. The only sound was the soft hum of machinery and the distant echoes of the wind outside. Then, Ronan leaned back, rubbing his face with a hand. "You're stubborn," he said. "And irritating." Leora laughed softly. "Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment." He allowed himself a small smile, almost imperceptible, before returning his gaze to the monitors. "I've survived 10 years here, doing everything alone. Maybe it's time I reconsider." Leora's heart lifted. She knew trust would take time, but this was a start. She spent the next hours helping him recalibrate sensors and stabilize some of the alien tech. Her knowledge of xenobiology and engineering proved valuable. And Ronan began to relax slightly, giving her small instructions rather than warnings. By the end of the day, the storm had cleared completely. Snow shimmered under the twin suns, and the mountain seemed almost peaceful. For the first time, Ronan allowed himself to feel something he hadn't in years: the possibility of companionship. That evening, as they sat side by side eating a simple meal, Leora ventured a question. "Ronan, do you ever think about what comes after? After all this?" He paused, his gaze fixed on the flickering lights of the console. "I've never allowed myself to think that far," he admitted. "The mountain, the mission, it's all I've known, and I thought it would be my life forever." "Maybe it doesn't have to be," Leora said softly. "Maybe you can have both, duty and friendship. Maybe even more, in time." Ronan looked at her again, eyes shadowed but thoughtful. "You really believe that?" "I do," she said, smiling. "I came here for science, but I stayed because I think people like you deserve to be understood, and maybe even cared for." He didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched between them, filled not with fear or tension, but with the fragile beginnings of trust. Outside, the twin suns sank behind the jagged peaks, The mountain remained wild, vast, and dangerous. But inside the dome, two humans began to form a bond that neither legend nor isolation could break. For Leora, this was only the beginning. And for Ronan, it was the first time in years that he dared to imagine a life that might include someone else. The mountain still held its secrets, and danger still lurked below. But for the first time, the mountain ghost was not entirely alone. The morning light spilled across the jagged peaks, casting long shadows over the snow and ice. Leora stepped outside the dome, taking a deep breath of the crisp mountain air. The storm from the previous days had cleared, but the wind still carried a chill that cut to the bone. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Curiosity and excitement mingled with the faintest trace of fear. Inside the dome, Ronan watched her from the doorway. His arms crossed. The expression on his face was unreadable, but his sharp eyes followed her every move. Leora had noticed how he seemed more relaxed now, yet she could tell something weighed on him. He moved with purpose, tending to the machinery and monitoring sensors around the dome. But there was a tension beneath the surface, a guarded energy he couldn't fully hide. "You should stay close," Ronan said, his voice low but steady. "The snow can hide dangerous drops, and the rocks aren't stable yet." "I'm careful," Leora replied, brushing back her hair. "Besides, I want to see the whole area. I need to understand it." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured toward a narrow path leading up the mountain. "There's something you should see," he said finally. "Not many people have walked that route." Leora's heart leapt with excitement. "Lead the way," she said. The climb was treacherous. Snow covered loose rocks, and the wind gusted in unpredictable bursts. Yet Ronan moved with the ease of someone who had spent years navigating this terrain. Leora struggled to keep up, but he waited patiently, offering a hand when the path grew steep or slippery. As they ascended, Leora's curiosity got the better of her. "Ronan, you said you're guarding something, but you haven't told me exactly what it is. Can you explain it?" He didn't answer at first, his gaze fixed on the path ahead. The silence stretched for a few moments before he spoke, his voice quiet, almost reluctant. "Years ago, an alien species attacked the frontier. They were called the Kaerulith, engineered to be intelligent, fast, and deadly. My team, we stopped them, but not completely." Leora's eyes widened. "Not completely?" Ronan glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "The Queen survived. I trapped her beneath this mountain. The rest of the species was neutralized. But she is still here, dormant, contained by the ruins. I've been keeping her sealed ever since." Leora felt a shiver run down her spine. "And if something happens to the containment? That's why I live here," he said bluntly. "That's why no one else can come near. If the containment fails, the colony would be in danger." The path grew steeper, leading to a plateau where jagged rocks jutted from the ice. From here, the ruins of an ancient structure were visible, partially buried beneath snow and debris. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls, pulsing with an eerie light. Leora felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. "This is incredible," she whispered. "Who built it?" "The Kaerulith," Ronan said simply. "Long before humans arrived. They were intelligent engineers. The structure itself is part of the containment system. It keeps the Queen trapped." Leora studied the glyphs and monitors Ronan had set up. "And you maintain all of this by yourself?" He nodded. "Every day. Every system must be checked. Every pulse measured. One mistake, and the Queen could awaken." The words made her stomach tighten. "That's a lot for one person to handle." Ronan's gaze hardened. "It's necessary. Someone has to do it." For the first time, Leora saw the weight of his years of solitude etched into his features. He was disciplined, strong, and determined, but he carried the burden alone. Without complaint, without hope that anyone would ever join him. She stepped closer, her voice gentle. "You don't have to do it alone anymore. I'm here now. I want to help. I may not know everything, but I can learn." Together, we can make it safer. Ronan looked at her, his eyes shadowed with doubt. You have no idea what you're offering. This is life or death. You could be hurt, trapped, or worse. I understand the risk, Leora said firmly. But I also know that humans are stronger together. And I believe we can handle it. I do that Kadak too. I do that Kadak too. I understand the risk, Leora said firmly. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fine. But you follow my instructions exactly. No mistakes. I promise, she said, feeling a thrill of excitement. They spent the next hours inspecting the ruins. Ronan showed her how the containment system worked, how the alien glyphs and technology interacted to keep the queen dormant. He explained the risks. If the energy pulses faltered, if a sensor failed, if a part of the structure collapsed, it could awaken the Kerulith. Leora listened carefully, absorbing every detail. She was amazed at Ronan's knowledge, his discipline, and his courage. It was clear why he had survived for so long in isolation. He was not just a man, he was a guardian, a protector, a human who had faced unimaginable danger and lived. As they worked, Leora noticed a slight tremor beneath their feet. At first, she thought it was the wind, but Ronan stiffened immediately. No, he muttered, checking the monitors. Something's moving. Leora's heart raced. The queen? She whispered. Ronan's eyes were sharp and focused. Not yet. But the energy readings are changing. The containment system is weakening. They moved quickly, following a precise protocol Ronan had practiced countless times. Leora assisted where she could, stabilizing the power flow, adjusting sensors, and monitoring the glyphs. The mountain trembled beneath them, faint vibrations growing stronger with every passing minute. This is bad, Ronan muttered, his hands moving over the console with practiced speed. The system is failing faster than expected. Leora's hands shook slightly, but she focused. Tell me what to do, she said firmly. I can help. Ronan looked at her, his usual guarded expression softened by a flicker of trust. Keep the energy balanced. Follow the readings. Don't panic. Together, they worked, moving with efficiency and precision. Leora felt a thrill of adrenaline, but also a sense of partnership she had never experienced. She was not just observing or helping, she was part of the mission, part of the responsibility, and part of the trust Ronan had finally extended. Hours passed. The tremors subsided slightly, though the system was still unstable. Leora wiped sweat from her brow, her hands trembling from the tension. We did it, she said cautiously. Ronan exhaled, leaning against the console. For now, he said. The system is holding, but only barely. This mountain, it's alive in a way most people can't understand. Leora nodded. And you've been keeping it alive alone for 10 years. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at her, his eyes shadowed but calm. You stayed, he said quietly. Most people would have run away by now. I stayed because I believe in people, Leora said softly. And because I believe in you. You're not just a legend or a ghost. You're human. And humans, we don't have to be alone. For the first time, Ronan allowed a faint smile to touch his lips. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was real. Leora felt a warmth in her chest, knowing that the bond between them was growing stronger, forged through trust, respect, and shared danger. The twin suns began to set behind the peaks, casting long shadows across the ruins. The mountain seemed calmer, though Leora knew the danger was far from over. The Kerulith Queen was still dormant, the containment fragile, and the mountain unpredictable. But for now, they had survived. Together, as they descended back to the dome, Leora looked at Ronan and smiled. We make a good team, she said lightly. Ronan glanced at her, his eyes unreadable. But there was a hint of acknowledgement in his expression. For now, he said. And you? You're stronger than I thought. Leora laughed softly. I told you, I'm not most people. Ronan's lips twitched, almost a smile. You're persistent. I'll give you that. And for the first time in years, Ronan Vale allowed himself to feel something he hadn't in a long time: hope. Not just for the containment, not just for the mountain, but for the possibility of a future where he wasn't alone. The journey was far from over. The Carolith Queen remained beneath the mountain, the containment system still fragile, and the frontier colony, unaware of the danger lurking nearby, but with Leora at his side, Ronan felt something he hadn't felt in years. The strength of partnership, the courage of trust, and the quiet promise that, together, they could face whatever the mountain stirred next. Outside, the winds howled across the peaks, carrying the faint echoes of danger. Inside the dome, two humans shared a quiet victory, the first step toward a bond that would change everything. The sun had barely risen over the jagged mountain peaks, spilling pale light across the frozen landscape. Inside the dome, Leora and Ronan were already hard at work, reviewing the latest data from the containment system. The night had been restless. The sensors had registered faint fluctuations, and the tremors beneath the mountain were growing stronger. Ronan's brow was furrowed as he analyzed the readings. The system is unstable, he said, his voice tight. Something is triggering the energy fluctuations faster than usual. If we don't act now, the Queen could awaken. Leora nodded, her own determination rising. Then we need to stabilize it. But I think we can do more. If the containment alone isn't enough, maybe we can neutralize the vault permanently. He looked at her sharply. That's risky. Extremely risky. You could die. I could die. And if we fail... He didn't finish the sentence. The possibility of a Carolith Queen breaking free was unthinkable. I know, Leora said firmly. But we've faced risk before. Together. And we survived. Ronan studied her for a long moment. Finally, he exhaled and nodded. Fine. But follow my instructions exactly. One wrong move, and the entire system could collapse. They prepared for the descent into the vault beneath the mountain. The entrance was hidden behind layers of alien stone and snow, accessible only through a narrow, winding passage. Leora adjusted her pack, checking the equipment Ronan had given her. Portable sensors, energy stabilizers, and a small emergency beacon. You ready? He asked, his voice steady but tense. As ready as I'll ever be, Leora replied. The passage was steep and treacherous. Snow crunched beneath their boots, and the walls of rock pressed close on either side. Leora followed Ronan carefully, noting how he navigated the twists and turns with practiced ease. She admired his skill, but she also felt a thrill of fear. The mountain was alive in its own way, and the slightest mistake could be fatal. When they reached the vault, the scale of the ancient alien structure became clear. Massive stone pillars rose from the floor, etched with glowing glyphs. Energy pulses ran along the walls, forming a lattice of light that seemed to breathe with life. Leora's eyes widened. It's incredible, she whispered. And terrifying. Yes, Ronan said quietly. It's both, and it's fragile. One wrong step could trigger a collapse or awaken the Queen. They moved carefully, following the path Ronan had memorized over years of solitude. The air was thick with a strange energy, tingling against their skin. Leora adjusted her portable sensors, monitoring the fluctuations. The readings are worse than I thought, she said, her voice tight. The system is failing in multiple sectors. Ronan's jaw tightened. Then we split up. You stabilize the energy flows here, and I'll check the containment lattice there. Keep the comms open at all times. Leora nodded and moved to the first energy panel. She adjusted the stabilizers, carefully balancing the pulses with the readings on her screen. The glyphs along the walls pulsed brighter as the energy balanced. Meanwhile, Ronan moved to the far side of the vault, his movements precise and deliberate. He adjusted alien machinery, realigning energy conduits and recalibrating the containment fields. His every action was deliberate, a dance of skill honed over years of guarding the mountain alone. For hours, they worked in tense silence, communicating only when necessary. The tremors beneath the mountain grew stronger, and Leora could feel the vibration through her boots. Sweat ran down her brow. But she focused on the task. One mistake, one misstep, and the Kaerulith Queen could awaken. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the vault. A section of the wall cracked, sending sparks of energy across the floor. Leora stumbled but regained her balance. "Ronan," she shouted through the comms. "I see it." He replied, his voice tight. "Stay calm. Keep the stabilizers active. I'll handle it." He moved toward the crack, adjusting the energy conduits with incredible speed. Leora followed his instructions, helping to redirect the energy flows. The wall pulsed violently, but slowly, the vibrations lessened. "You're doing well," Ronan said, his voice carrying a rare note of approval. "Keep it steady." Leora nodded, her heart pounding. She could feel the tension in the vault, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. But she also felt a strange exhilaration. For the first time, she was not just an observer, she was part of the mission, part of the solution. Hours passed, and the energy flows stabilized temporarily. But the sensors warned that the system was still unstable. Leora checked the readings. "It's holding. For now," she said, "but the Queen's power is building again. If we don't act fast, it will be too late." Ronan exhaled sharply. "Then we finish this. Permanently." He explained the final procedure. They would not just stabilize the system. They would purge the vault entirely, neutralizing the Queen's power source. It was dangerous. The energy release could be catastrophic, if not controlled perfectly. But it was the only way to ensure the colony's safety. Leora nodded, her hands steady. "Let's do it." They worked together, adjusting conduits, balancing pulses, and monitoring the alien glyphs. The energy surged through the vault, brighter and hotter with every second. Sparks flew across the walls, and the tremors grew stronger. Suddenly, a section of the floor collapsed, sending debris crashing toward Leora. Ronan reacted instantly, grabbing her arm and pulling her to safety. She looked at him, heart pounding, and realized how much she had come to rely on his skill and courage. "Thank you," she whispered. "Focus," he said firmly, though there was a faint warmth in his eyes. "We're not done yet." They continued, moving as a single unit, each anticipating the other's actions. Leora adjusted the stabilizers, while Ronan rerouted the energy conduits. The power surged, threatening to overwhelm them. But together, they controlled it. Finally, with a final adjustment, the energy pulses aligned perfectly. The glyphs along the walls dimmed, and a quiet hum filled the vault. The Kaerulith Queen's power was neutralized, the tremors ceased, and the mountain fell silent. Leora sank to the floor, exhausted but exhilarated. "We did it," she said softly. Ronan leaned against a pillar, catching his breath. "For now," he said. "The mountain is safe. But this doesn't mean it's over. There will always be threats. That's what being a guardian means." Leora looked at him, admiration in her eyes. "I understand now. And I want to stay. I want to help. I want to be here. With you." Ronan studied her, his expression softening. "You've done well," he said quietly. "Better than I expected. You've earned your place here." They began the long climb back to the dome. Tired but triumphant. Outside, the twin suns were setting behind the peaks, painting the snow in shades of gold and crimson. The mountain, once silent and foreboding, seemed almost peaceful. As they reached the dome, Leora turned to Ronan. "You're incredible," she said softly. "All these years. You did this alone." He shook his head. "I didn't think anyone could help. But you proved me wrong." For the first time, Ronan allowed himself to feel something more than relief or exhaustion. He felt a quiet hope, a sense that he didn't have to face the mountain alone anymore. Leora had earned his trust, his respect, and perhaps, in time, something deeper. Inside the dome, they shared a simple meal, their conversation light but meaningful. They talked about the mountain, the vault, and the future. Leora listened as Ronan recounted stories of his past missions, his team, and the sacrifices he had made. She offered her own insights and observations. And for the first time, the mountain ghost shared not just his burdens, but his thoughts, fears, and hopes. The twin suns disappeared behind the peaks, leaving the sky a deep shade of indigo. The mountain was quiet, the vault secure, and for the first time in years, Ronan felt a sense of normalcy, however fragile it might be. Leora looked at him and smiled. "We make a good team," she said softly. Ronan glanced at her, his usual guarded expression softening. "Yes," he said. "Better than I expected." Outside, the mountain remained wild and untamed. The Kaerulith threat was gone, but the frontier was still dangerous. Yet inside the dome, two humans had proven that courage, trust, and partnership could overcome even the most impossible odds. And for Ronan Vale, the man who had lived in isolation for a decade, the presence of Leora was a reminder that even the strongest guardians could find companionship, hope, and perhaps a future worth fighting for. The morning air on the mountain was crisp and clear. The storm had long passed, leaving the peaks sparkling under the twin suns. Inside the dome, Leora moved quietly, checking the sensors and ensuring the containment vault remained stable. The events of the past days weighed heavily on both her and Ronan. But there was a sense of calm now, a fragile peace after the storm of danger they had faced together. Ronan sat nearby, leaning back against the control console, his arms crossed. The mountain ghost, feared for years, now looked almost at ease. The legend of his ferocity still lingered in the minds of the colony. But Leora had seen the truth. A man burdened with responsibility, disciplined, and courageous beyond measure, yet human in every way. "You're quiet," Leora said softly, breaking the silence. "I'm thinking," Ronan replied, his eyes fixed on the glowing monitors. "It's over. For now. The vault is neutralized, the queen is gone, and the mountain is safe. But I've never been without a mission. I don't know how to be normal." Leora smiled faintly. "Normal is overrated. You've done what few humans could ever attempt. You protected the colony alone for 10 years. That's extraordinary." He shook his head. "Extraordinary. But lonely. That's all it's been." "Not anymore," Leora said, moving closer. "You're not alone now. You have me." Ronan's gaze softened, the first trace of vulnerability showing in his eyes. "You've changed everything, Leora. I didn't think I could let anyone in. Not after everything I've seen. Not after everything I've lost." "I know," she said gently, "and I'm not here to take that from you. I'm here because I want to face the mountain with you. I want to be your partner. Not because of any protocol, but because I believe in you. And in us." He studied her for a long moment, weighing her words. Then, slowly, he stood and took her hand. "You're brave. Braver than I could have imagined. And you," she said, smiling, "are stronger than everyone thinks. Strong enough to face the mountain, and strong enough to let someone stand beside you." Outside, the twin suns climbed higher, painting the peaks with golden light. The mountain was calm now, serene, yet it carried the weight of secrets that few could understand. Ronan and Leora had faced those secrets together, and the bond between them had grown stronger with every trial. A faint hum from the vault reminded them that danger was never truly gone. But now, with two humans working as one, the weight of the burden felt lighter. Together, they could face challenges the mountain ghost could never have handled alone. Ronan led Leora to the edge of the plateau, where the colony's view was visible for miles. Tiny settlements dotted the valley below, unaware of the threat that had been neutralized. The thought that their lives had been unknowingly saved by a man who had lived in isolation struck Leora profoundly. "They owe you," she said softly. "Even if they don't know it, I don't need thanks, Ronan replied. I've done what needed to be done. Always. But you're human, Leora said, her voice insistent. Even the strongest humans deserve recognition and companionship. Ronan looked at her, the first true smile touching his lips. Perhaps you're right, he said quietly. The day passed in a quiet rhythm of routine. They checked the remaining sensors, repaired minor damage, and shared a meal together. Leora marveled at how natural it felt to work alongside him, how their teamwork had become seamless. The isolation that had defined Ronan's life for a decade was no longer complete. With her presence, the mountain was no longer a prison but a home, and perhaps, a beginning. Evening fell, and the sky turned shades of orange and crimson. Leora and Ronan stood side by side, watching the twin suns set behind the peaks. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with shared understanding rather than words. Then, Ronan spoke, his voice soft but steady. Leora, you asked me to marry you when you first arrived. I couldn't answer then, not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't ready. I never thought I would be. Leora turned to him, her heart racing. And now? Now, he said, taking her hand. I know that life doesn't have to be solitary. I've spent 10 years guarding this mountain alone, and I realize now that someone by my side doesn't weaken me. It strengthens me. You've shown me that. Her eyes filled with emotion. Then, Ronan said, stepping closer. I ask you this time. Not as a protocol, not as a duty, but from my heart. Will you marry me? Tears pricked the corners of Leora's eyes. Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. Yes, Ronan, I will. The sun dipped behind the peaks, bathing the mountain in golden light. For the first time in years, Ronan Vale allowed himself to feel hope, not just hope for the colony or the mission, but hope for a future he had never imagined. Leora's hand in his was a reminder that he was no longer alone. The celebration would come later. The colony would honor the mountain ghost as a hero, though few would understand the true scope of his bravery. But for Ronan and Leora, the real triumph was personal. They had faced danger, isolation, and fear together, and emerged not just alive, but stronger, connected, and ready for whatever the future might bring. Over the next days, they worked together to repair the dome fully, ensure the vault's neutralization was permanent, and stabilize the mountain's environment. Leora documented everything, sending detailed reports to the colony. She marveled at Ronan's knowledge and discipline, the way he anticipated every problem, every threat, every failure. She realized he had been guarding more than the Kerulith Queen, he had been guarding hope itself, for humanity and for himself. As the twin suns rose on the following morning, Leora and Ronan stood together, looking over the valley. Snow glittered in the light, and the mountain seemed calm, almost peaceful. They had survived the impossible, neutralized a threat no one else even knew existed, and discovered something even more profound. Trust, partnership, and human resilience. You know, Leora said softly, the colony might finally stop telling those scary stories about you. Don't. Ronan chuckled, a deep, rare sound that seemed to echo against the mountain walls. They might, he said. But let them keep their legends. It doesn't matter. I know the truth. And what is the truth? Leora asked, tilting her head. The truth, he said, turning to her with a faint smile, is that even the strongest guardian needs someone by his side. And I've found that person. For the first time, Ronan Vale allowed himself to imagine a future beyond duty and isolation, a future with someone who chose to be with him, not because of fear or obligation, but because of trust and respect. Leora squeezed his hand, a quiet affirmation of the bond they had forged through danger, understanding, and mutual courage. The day passed in quiet fulfillment. They repaired, stabilized, and strengthened the systems of the dome. Leora shared stories of the colony, and Ronan spoke of the years he had spent in solitude, the mistakes he had made, and the lessons he had learned. Together, They laughed, planned, and simply existed, two humans against the vastness of the frontier, proving that even in isolation, humanity's strength and spirit endured. As night fell, the twin moons rose above the peaks. Leora and Ronan stood outside, the air crisp and alive with possibilities. The mountain, once a symbol of fear and isolation, had transformed into a testament to resilience, courage, and human partnership. Ronan looked at Leora, his eyes reflecting the moon's light. "We've faced the mountain," he said quietly. "We've faced danger, and we've survived. And now, we face the future. Together. Dear Lawn. I put it even the moons." Leora smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't known in years. "Together," she echoed. The mountain had tested them. The vault had challenged them, and the Carolith had threatened them, but in the end, they had proven that human courage, partnership, and determination could overcome even the most impossible odds. The colony below would celebrate their heroism, the legends would grow, and the mountain would remain wild and untamed. But within the dome, two humans had changed everything, not just for themselves, but for the future of all who called the frontier home. And as the night settled over the peaks, Ronan Vale and Leora Kessler knew that they had not only survived, they had triumphed, together. The mountain had finally given them peace. And in that peace, everything had changed.